5 of the championship, the Hafren Enduro, sponsored by Husky Sport. This was a one-day event which took place on the 23rd of August. The start was at Geraint Jones's farm, and the Parc Fermé was one of the farm buildings. The weather was not good at 7:30 in the morning. The first riders started at 1 minute past 8. A quick update in the championship series. David Knight was in third place with 115 points. Rob Sartin was second and his score was 119. Eddie Smith was still the leader, but his score 127. We joined the clubman riders. They have to do 2 full laps of the course in the Haviland Forest and 2 timed laps on the test. That's back at Geraint's farm. There are 4 time checks in the lap. This is part of the going from 1 to 2 and it's fairly tight. The other tight check from 3 to 4. Well, 82 clubman riders started the event and only 21 finished. This was a difficult spot, lots of branches on the ground. Some riders tried to take a different line. The weather was making matters worse. It was now raining quite heavily. Quite a few of the riders had to get off and push. Paul Davis was making good progress, but then there was someone in front of him. Tom Humphries had fallen under his bike, and down on the track, Jock Lowe was in trouble. William Lloyd had just returned from a long trip in Australia. He said he was going back tomorrow. Andy Collins decided to do some weight training. Ian Beattie was riding his first Enduro. I told him they're not all as tough as this. So who did finish? Well, in the over 40s there were 2. Steve Colville got there, but he was rather late. Although Terry Thomas found the going a bit difficult, he won the class. He was 5 minutes down at the end of the day. He seemed to be enjoying himself. The special test at Geraint's farm was bone dry yesterday, but a sea of mud today. In the open clubman class there was only one finisher, Clive Passingham, and he was very tired. He hadn't seen that tree. You're all right, are you?
No, not really, Frank.
The bike isn't too good. Clive battled on, and at the end of the day he was only 4 minutes down. In the 250s, Andy Walton from the Isle of Man finished in 7th place. Andy was one of 12 clubman riders to go clean on the going. One place above Andy was Adrian Evans from Ustergunlice. He was riding a Suzuki 250. Well, he pushed it round for some of the time. Adrian was only riding in the Welsh rounds. That could have been a mistake. After 2 laps on the test, Adrian beat Andy Walton by just over a second. Number 206, Dylan Hughes from Aberporth, was just that little bit quicker than Adrian on the test. Like everyone else, Dylan found the going tough, but he finished in 5th place. The competitors in this event were numbered according to their placing in the series. Dylan was 206, so he was in 6th place. Steve Melville, number 204, was in 4th place. And today Steve finished in 4th place in the 250s. He beat Dylan by nearly 3 seconds on the test. Brian Collins from Ostragunlice finished in 3rd place. Like his teammate Adrian Evans, Brian was only contesting the rounds in Wales. Who knows, he may have enjoyed the Breckland and the Dartmoor. At least the weather was good. And runner-up in the 250s, the man over from the Falklands, Johnny Summers. I suppose he was used to this sort of weather. Johnny battled his way through the Hafren forest. After 2 laps on the test, he beat Brian Collins by quite a big margin, 25 seconds. And the top 250cc rider, number 202, Chris Hockey from Colchester. For most of the day, Chris was having to follow Edward Jones. Edward was number 201. Even the top clubman riders have to get off and push. Out on the test, Chris's times 383 and 347 seconds, and at the end of the day he beat Johnny Summers by 18 seconds. Chris was the top 250cc rider, but he finished down in 4th place overall. There were 3 125s above him. Only 5 125s finished the course. Steve Eggleton was down in 5th place. He'd lost quite a lot of time on the go-in. 4th in the class was Neil Boyd. He was clean on the go-in, and on test times he finished between Brian Collins and Steve Melville. Number 213, Rhys Whittle-Williams, was 3rd in the 125s and also 3rd overall. On the test, Rhys's times 369 and 356. He beat Chris Hockey by 5 seconds. Of course, Rhys, a local man from Llanidloes, and the 2 riders who beat him, very local indeed. They were Dylan Jones and Edward Jones. Dylan was number 203. He had told me yesterday he thought this spot was going to be quite interesting. I didn't realise that he was going to struggle, though. Edward was number 201, the leader in the Clubman Series. Both he and Dylan should know their way around the Hafren forest. Both of them may have ridden around these fields where the test was held, but certainly not in these conditions. Dylan's first lap was 366 seconds. On lap 2, 341. He beat Rhys Whittle-Williams by 18 seconds. Edward was much quicker. He won both tests, 342 on lap 1, and his second test, 329. So Edward took the Premier Award. The atrocious weather did help the expert riders a little. Instead of having to do 3 laps of the course, their schedule was cut back to 2. About 50 riders started the event. There were 24 finishers and only 5 experts went clean. Once again, the riders were numbered according to their places in the series, so the low numbers were the top riders. Well, they were the riders who had scored the most points. There were just 2 finishers in the 4-stroke class. Number 127 was Mark Buckley. He was 34 minutes late on the go-in. Chris Tett from Dudley on the Yamaha 400 won the class, but he lost 31 minutes on the go-in. Chris was now leading the 4-stroke class, but still one more championship round to come. In the 250s, number 106, Craig Bound, finished in 5th place. He dropped a minute on the go-in. Craig should have been better placed than that, really, but he had 2 rather slow test times. He averaged 4:25 on the test, and most of the riders were around 3:60 to 3:70. Gas rider John Kirkham, number 117, lost 2 minutes on the go-in. He should really have finished below Craig Bounds, but John's test times were much quicker. His first test, 3:52, he was slower on the second one, trying too hard, I think. Mick Murphy saw what happened, but it was too wet to take photographs. Neil Williams from Brecon was one of the 5 expert riders to go clean. Neil finished 3rd in his class and 5th overall. His first test was a bit slow. Neil's total score in the class was now 120. That put him in 2nd place. And runner-up in the 250s today, number 108, Tim Hunt. Tim was averaging about 6 minutes on the test. He beat Neil Williams by 9 seconds and finished 4th overall. And the top 250cc rider, number 104, Ian Mandel. Ian was clean on the go-in and really excelled himself on the special test. Ian won the first test, beating Cy Higgins by 2 seconds. He also won the second test, beating the rest of the field by over 9 seconds. You're wondering what happened to Cy Higgins? Well, he lost 8 minutes on the go-in. So Ian, the top 250cc rider, and he also takes the Premier Award. In the 125s, there were only 7 finishers. Wayne Mandel lost 12 minutes, but he was in 5th place. Number 115, Peter Batt, also lost 12 minutes, but beat Wayne on the test by the smallest of margins, 0.26 of a second. Will Midgley finished 3rd in the class. He dropped 4 minutes on the go-in. 109. 2 of the 125cc riders went clean. They were both on Suzukis. William Jones was one of those, and he finished runner-up in the class. William had a good ride at Dartmoor. It was even better at the Hafren. On the test, he was averaging around 355 seconds. And the rider who beat William was Winhope from Raider. Hopey had had bad luck at both the Breckland and the Beacons, but it was coming right for him now. He beat William by over 33 seconds to score maximum points in the class. And what about Simon Evans? Well, he had bike problems after the first lap and had to retire. At the end of this very tough event, William Jones finished 3rd overall, Hopey was runner-up, and the Premier Award went to Ian Mandel. Although Simon Evans hadn't scored any points at this event, it looked as though he had already won the 125cc championship. And although Cy Higgins had finished down the field today, it looked as though he was now the 250cc champion. The championship class was supposed to be riding for over 8 hours, but because of the atrocious weather, the number of laps was cut back from 3 to 2. On the tight check from 3 to 4, Rob Sartin was leading the way, but take a close look at him now because we weren't going to see him again. Eddie Smith wasn't far behind, and although this check was fairly tight, most of the championship class would go clean. David Knight was number 3, and like Rob Sartin, it was the last time we were going to see him. Carl Tiley, number 4, he was well up on time. The Suzuki rider Richard Hay, followed by Mark Vaughan. Later in the day, I saw Geraint Jones. Because of this torrential rain, he was very worried about one of the river crossings. When the championship riders came around again on lap 2, the first one we saw was Wyn Hughes, and he was number 9. Wyn was followed by Jason Fraser. Now what had happened to the low numbers? Geraint had been right to worry about that river crossing. It was now completely impassable, but Rob Sartin had tried to get through and lost his bike in the process. It had been swept down the river. Rob Sartin was out of the event. He hadn't got a bike to ride, and David Knight had flooded his bike, so it looked as though he had retired. Tiley was still going, but he had lost time trying to find a different crossing over the river. The next rider coming up through the trees, Richard Hay, he was late, but possibly that one check might be scrapped. And coming next, A.D. Smith. Now he had been following Rob Sartin for most of the day, so possibly he had seen him trying to cross the river. There was one more rider coming through. It was Tim Lewis. After this check, it was back to the special test for their final lap. In the 4-stroke class, Phil Smithson managed to beat John Deacon today. Phil lost 11 minutes and John was 16 down. Jason Fraser won the 400cc class and he beat the other 2 4-stroke riders. Jason lost 5 minutes on the go-in. Although there was still the Natterjack to come, Jason had now won this class. In the 125s, Mark Chapman had seen some of Geraint's cows earlier in the morning, not on the course though. He was having problems towards the end of the day. He still finished 4th in the 125s though. Number 18, Calvin Williams from Lampeter, hadn't ridden since the Isker. He lost 16 minutes on the go-in, but finished 3rd in the class. It wasn't really a good day for Tim Lewis. He did finish runner-up, but he'd lost 9 minutes on the go-in. Tim had failed to finish the first day at Dartmoor. He only scored 15 points that weekend. With his 17 points today, his total was now 139. And the top 125cc rider here at the Hafren, Mark Vaughan from Knighton, riding a Honda. Vaughan was clean on the going. He did some very impressive test times and finished 3rd overall. His total points in the 125s after 5 rounds, 150. He was the series leader. In the 250s, 5 riders went clean. John Shirt finished in 5th place. John must have made a mistake on his second test. He was right off the pace. This is John's first season in the championship class, and with 1 round to come, he's in 6th place in the 250s. He was stretching himself just a bit on some of the corners. In 4th place in the class today, Suzuki rider Richard Hay. Richard was also a bit slower on his second test, but beat John Shirt by 20 seconds. And Richard was beaten by his Suzuki teammate, Wyn Hughes. Wyn had been scoring well in the series up until the Dartmoor Enduro. The heat got to him on the first day and he had to retire. On day 2 he only scored 9 points. With just the Natterjack to come, Wyn's score 84 points. Carl Tiley almost certainly lost a few points at the Dartmoor Enduro on the final test of the weekend. He wasn't going to make any mistakes here though. After the first test he was in third place. Rob Sartin had done the fastest time, but that didn't really matter anymore. Carl was going wide on the corners to get as much grip as possible. On the second test, Carl's time, 355 seconds. That was the fastest to date, but there was still A.D. Smith to come. After the first test, A.D. was nearly 5 seconds up on Tiley and 8 seconds down on Sartin, but of course that didn't matter. A.D. knew that he had to stay on the bike if he was going to beat Carl. He came very close to one of the stakes. A.D. went on to win this second test, and at the end of the day he beat Carl Tiley by just over 5 seconds. So in the championship, with just one round to come, the Natterjack Enduro, A.D. was leading the series with 147, Rob Sartin in second place on 119, David Knight third on 115, and Carl Tiley in fourth place on 109.